You're like, I want to see what's going on.
Yeah. My favorite community board that I was on was the Showgrounds.
That's right, we were talking about that.
That does sound like an interesting gig.
It was.
You probably saw a person.
And then when the
Unusual
governor
type
took
of person.
over, he removed all Democrats. It's such a, it's such a nonpartisan board. There's nothing about partisan politics. It's like, so which barn do you think should we put a roof on? Those bathrooms need to be refurbished. I mean, this has nothing to do with partisan politics. It's just our point about the government. So, and the problem we have now, particular board that everyone's now, is Mary is the only pro-equestrian.
You were telling me about that, yeah. Did I tell you that they called me and they did a community member survey? They're asking questions about it as just about kind of their vision. I thought it was pretty cool because we work with a ton of government agencies. All of them surveyed about like a live phone survey. So
anyone who's ever been there can see it's a horse facility. That's why it was built. It was for the horse and flower show. And then they added other stuff later. And then when the funding was removed by the state, then they had to be completely self-supporting. That was problematic.
So we're 2 minutes past 2. I don't know. I haven't heard from
I texted them, but I haven't heard from them.
I think we're just going to go ahead and get started with it. And
Ethan's not coming for sure. There's
Yeah.
Kirsten.
we'll wait for her to come.
Ignore my text.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
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 What would you like to sit there?
This is today where you are.
Anywhere that you like.
There'll be one empty seat. I put out 7, but there's only 6.
Have you all been waiting for me?
No, we're just fumbling around, getting ready.
I think we're about ready though.
But when we saw you out in the parking lot, then we waited for you.
Oh, thank
We
you.
didn't want to start. the
Jonathan, did
meeting.
you just text me
I
something?
did. I was like, are you?
I didn't leave myself out. Clearly.
All good.
All right, so we've got audio.
Well,
Are we good on the
I'm
audio in the Zoom?
Yeah, I purposely muted it.
Okay,
That's why.
got it. Okay. All right, so I am going to call this meeting to order. I'd like to announce this meeting is being recorded right on cue. And Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Yeah, Director Brandt,
Here.
Director Clarity,
Here.
Director Aguilar, here, Director Freeman, here, Director Dessler,
Here.
Bertrand's not here.
All right, so before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Anascoyo, the land that Isla sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Now we're going to move to the consent agenda. Do any directors have items they want to pull?
I just have a quick edit, which is the Alshire and Winder bill was 599627 instead of 5027. So I'll make that edit, but in the motion.
All right. Do I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda with the amendments?
I'll make that motion.
Made by Toplitz. Is there a second? Second by Clarity. Any public comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote and we can do the regular vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Now we're going to move to the public comment period. This is the time for any member of the public to speak on anything that is not on tonight's agenda. We will not take action on any item that is not on our agenda as provided for by law. But if you have a comment that you'd like to make, now is the time. Laura, go ahead.
Community member Laura Dewey, how do you do? I live at 6647 Colegio Road, which is Friendship Manor. Sort of my reason for being here tonight, I don't know if y'all have seen one of my favorite movies, Sum of All Fears, and with Morgan Freeman. Well, you got to see it. There's this part, Morgan Freeman plays the head of the CIA, and young Jack Ryan is his underling, and they've just been in a congressional committee. What he tells him is, what I do is I tell them, what I'm gonna ask them to do. And then I give them how to think about it. And then I come back later and ask them to do it. So this is the first part. And one comment, just generally, I love living in IV. I've certainly come full circle. This is where we first lived. We moved here in 1965. And I've lived many places in Santa Barbara, and I'm finally back. Came back to Friendship Manor in 2018 after my retirement. And I don't need to tell you all how great the weather is, how it's nice to be. I'm out from the ocean. But one of the things I noticed first when I moved to Friendship Manor, which is right up on El Colegio, is the traffic. It was this sleepy little line, back in the old days, it was a sleepy little two-lane road, and you had to stop at the booth at the end, right at that stadium, where we just had that horrible accident. And you know, the speed limit, as you come down Los Carneros Road, there's this giant, I mean, huge sign that says 45 miles per hour. So of course that means 50 to 55. There was, according to our executive director, there have been several times people have lost it on that curve. So they're trying to do it at 55 miles an hour. And they've come up and run into our walls, our shrubbery. One time they even broke our sign. And there actually is a code section. It is, what is it, 22.352, that says in a senior zone that speed limit is 25 miles per hour. So right in front of our building is a sign that says 35. Really what we need are signs that say 25 and senior zone. And now I'm going to reveal to you my true plan, which is to try to get El Colegio from end to end be 25 miles an hour. Going up to Mesa Road on Los Carneros and going up to Phelps on Stork. I was really happy to hear that you guys got some money and you're working on traffic and mobility. A couple of our residents and I attended the workshop that Sydney organized a few weeks ago, and so we all started talking between ourselves, of course. And there's up on over by the Calle Real Center, there's a senior community called Encina Meadows, I think. The road is La Encina Lane, and that's where I first started seeing signs, that big 25 mile per hour signs, and right underneath it says senior zone, big yellow sign. And so did the other two people I came with, and they said, "Is that a law?" Maybe. I said, "Oh, let me look it up." And being a retired lawyer, of course, it wasn't so hard to find this little code section. And so what we're going to be asking is that it go on the agenda in 2 weeks. Our executive directors, you've gotten that letter, haven't you, Jonathan? Yeah, has written a letter basically making the same request. And I realize this is something that ultimately is going to go to the Board of Supervisors so they can tell the roads people and what have you to change the signs. And by the way, I'm going to go block by block, and I promise Sydney I'd do this, and with suggested signage, you know, and then of course we're going to need to use whatever influence we have with UCPD to enforce it. Tell them how many wonderful dollars they can make on tickets, maybe put up some speed bumps, maybe one of those big signs that say speed limit 25, your speed, you know, it's got a little radar detector. And we can make this truly residential community. So as I said, that's the future, but for also for the future will be the first request, which will be the designation as a senior zone, so that we can at least slow it down there. They won't be able to get back up to 60 miles per hour by the campus that way. So anyway, that's all I wanted to ask you all tonight. Nice seeing all the faces. I'm sorry to hear Ethan's ill. Spencer and I know each other, but you all are new to me. No, Jonathan. From this.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your comments.
Thank
Laura.
you, my pleasure. Thank you for all your work. I'm so happy this board exists. I mean, you all know what it was before. Ivy is the stepchild of Santa Barbara County. But yeah, I love that here.
Well, I really appreciate your support, and you're a very unique type of citizen to be both engaged and making a request, but also to say how I'm going to try and figure out how I can participate in these various ways and try to be a part of the solution. And we need more of that. So
Thank you.
Appreciate you bringing this forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I care. And I don't want to see more kids dying. God, that's awful. You know, at the Friendship Manor, we saw the ambulance going to and from the accident. Usually the ambulances, sadly to say, are coming to us, but there were several that went down that road in a very short period of time. It was unlawful. Anyway, so good night, y'all. Have a wonderful meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Take care.
All right, Jonathan, do we have any public comments on Zoom?
No hands are up.
And can I just ask, is that something we can do?
So I think it's something that I think Jonathan and I are gonna talk with the supervisor's office and public works about. I emailed them this morning to try to get an idea if we can set up a meeting to talk more about it.
Yeah, we can take an official position if we want to like, endorse a letter.
I would be interested in doing that.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, well, we'll talk about it with them and see if we can bring something back, because it does sound like there's this other letter too. Do you want to read that just to get it into the record, the letter that we had received?
It's
Yes,
almost
the same
exactly
thing,
the same.
except it did do the citations. I believe she did as well.
Yeah, it was almost the same. I think they got the information from her, but it's endorsed by the Friendship Management Board to us, asking for us to put in our agenda next meeting and endorse the idea.
Great.
Great.
Our very busy next agenda.
Yeah, I know. The next one will be a little
I know,
longer,
'cause
but
this one's a little skinnier than
Yeah.
it's supposed to be.
Well, we can work and see what the best time is too. So.
Yeah.
All right, and no other public comments on Zoom?
doesn't look like it.
All right, so we're gonna move to item 4.1, Isla Vista parking study funding.
Excellent. So we've had this come a few times, but today we're bringing it to the board to consider approval of the funding for the study over 2 fiscal years, and to authorize official requests to be made of the county and of UC Santa Barbara for partnership funding. We also have Julie Dixon from Dixon Resources Unlimited and her team on the call too, to answer any questions and to say a few words about what they plan to do. And what we have attached here, let me share my screen, is, oops, where's the button? There it is. What we've got attached is, here's the funding breakdown. So it's a 245,000 is the funding level the committee is recommending, which is the 12-month study. Yes, oh yes, good call. So that's the total cost, and it's about an 80%, 20% split between the 2 fiscal years in terms of cost. So 80% 22-23 and 20% in 23-24. And so it just breaks down like this: 66,000 and then 16,000 for each per year, totaling 82. So that's where we got the numbers from, and there were some updates to the proposal. The main updates, the main updates were, I didn't highlight them, so I'm not going to scroll to it, but it was around adding a goal to increase the availability of public parking. That was an explicit thing that was suggested to us, and as well as from our conversations with the Coastal Commission, there were other, tweaks to the scope of work to help fit what they were talking to us about. So that's the update. It didn't change the cost though. And yeah, I'll see if Julie has anything she wants to say. Just to introduce Julie, she's the principal of Dixon Resources Unlimited and former Isla Vista resident. So
Indeed. Thank you. If it's okay, I'll share my screen. We prepared just a really brief introduction, and I'm also joined by a couple of my colleagues, and it looks like I just need to have enabled for screen share, and I can share just a couple of slides with you all.
Oh, yeah, okay, sure, yes.
Great. Thank you
There you
so much. Excellent. Thank you very much. And we will be brief because I know you all have an agenda to get through. So first and foremost, I can't tell you how excited we are to be here today, myself in particular. And for those of you that did read our proposal, this is a project that is really near and dear to my heart because I actually started my career in Isla Vista just over 30 years ago. And I think that's something that being able to have that familiarity and understanding. And, again, kudos to you, as I've said to several of the board members, of what you all have been able to accomplish. I have to tell you, the struggle was real back when I was there in Isla Vista. And I think just some of the things that the board has really been able to achieve is real compliments to the team. I did definitely bring some of my colleagues here today. I do have to recognize that my colleague Emily did graduate from UC San Diego, but we won't hold that against her today. But this is something that when we talk about the familiarity, the team that we have here is just some team that really cares, and someone that when I say our team really focuses on equitability and accessibility, it's something that I think is really important. Some of my colleagues, including Emily, Cameron, and Kelly, were actually recognized nationally over this last several years for the 40 Under 40 award recognition from the National Parking Association. And some of the things that I think is also exciting, he's not here tonight, but we have a new team member who's also joining us, who actually is a specialist in community parking districts and clean, green, and safe maintenance assessment programs as well. So those are just some of the little additives. Kelly, my colleague, also does a lot of work supporting coastal commission efforts. We have several coastal cities that we work with, even most recently the city of Ventura, where we just started working with them and helping work with them on several coastal initiatives. I think one of the things that's important about Dixon is to really highlight and reinforce is you are talking to the folks that are actually going to be supporting this project. We are working on identifying a local resource too, which I'm really excited about because of the fact that there is going to be so much data collection, and we're just in the final details of negotiating. It looks like a UCSB senior who will be heading into her last year of school. And I think that that's really important because when we talk about an adaptive solution, we want to make sure that we're as responsive as possible. And I think that what's really important is, I know that this is a really substantial project. It's going to last for a fairly long term, but I think it's important to recognize that we don't wait for the project to end to bring recommendations or ideas forward to the board. And that's something that I think is really important when you talk about the comprehensive services that we basically focus on. And again, because of the loyalty that I have to Isla Vista, we're really excited about looking at the existing conditions and really looking at that assessment and inventory. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of stakeholder engagement in every project that we support. If you speak to any of our customers, any of our references, they'll tell you how critical the engagement is, and making sure that we talk to everyone that will talk to us and trying to find every means possible, whether it means setting up a table in the park, going out and knocking on doors, online surveys, whatever the forum might be, taking advantage of those opportunities to engage the community so that we can make sure that we're hearing the voices and needs of everyone and making sure that we're looking at a comprehensive solution that really is going to be something that can really be sustainable for the long term. And I think that that's the one thing we get the most, is that people call us parking realists, because of the fact that it's not just about theory and concept, it's about reality and how to make this work in Isla Vista. And data, as I mentioned, is really key. And I know you all can appreciate the ability to make data-driven decisions. And you've heard me already mention a couple of these things, but making parking easy, convenient, and accessible, looking at opportunities, to minimize the footprint of vehicles, congestion, and emissions. And what we really want to do is quit making Band-Aid solutions and just pushing the problem from one part of town to the other. And we want to get to the place of being proactive and really focusing on education and outreach, because we're seeking compliance, not necessarily a bunch of tickets to be issued. And so with that, again, we're really looking forward to this opportunity of being hands-on. I'm actually going to be leading the project, which is something that I'm really excited about because, like I mentioned, just having watched Isla Vista and continuing to watch Isla Vista over the years, I really am excited to come back, and as I shared during the interview process, and take all of the lessons that I've learned and all of the field experience and working with the team so that we can really improve the quality of life in Isla Vista and even moving it forward. So with that, again, excited about the opportunity, ready to get started, and available to answer any questions for you all.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ms. Dixon. And it's great to have you back, even virtually, in our community. It's really cool to hear about your background and connection to Isla Vista. So thank you for sharing.
One more person even too.
All right, we're getting a view of everyone, including Jonathan. Cool. Any questions from the board for Jonathan or for Ms. Dixon?
Or parking ad hoc committee.
or anything that the parking ad hoc committee would like to share? Director Freeman?
I would like to share something that I think also is sort of a question that could by the way, so I'm sorry. I'm in extremely low energy today, and I'm getting very awkwardly timed sleep, and I don't deal with the heat well. I've also been busy with things. I'm sorry. I just like have it. Okay. So as I've mentioned in previous meetings, I've been dealing with I've been involved in discussions about parking since 2015, actually really 2014. In particular, there was a parking subcommittee that I was involved in for AB3. So in the same AB3 being the group that was meeting with Doss Williams in order to try to construct this, and we came to actually turn into Assembly Building on it for free. It was I'm on the subcommittee for parking on the government. I was on the subcommittee for parking on the free government. And for that meeting, we managed to get representatives of Goleta and university, from Sustainable University Now, of the county. We had Surfrider, people from the West End, we had some students, and we managed to come to a compromise position on what we would do with parking. Actually, I should say, I'm really good at bearing the lead, and I really should not do that, so that you at least have an understanding. Why am I saying it? I believe we need to expand the scope of what it is that we're studying that will affect the budget as presented, and this is something I've only come to a realization of in the last few days. So we came to a compromise on what it is that we actually wanted to see out. I should say, really put it this way: came to a compromise on the mechanics of the parking permit program. Even very specifically, we're looking at a parking permit program, and then we brought that back to the main, to the main AB3 group, and we got hit on two things, which I feel bad that I didn't think of when we were in the subcommittee, and but it was the effects on the undocumented community in the area and the effects on the houseless community in the area, very particularly the people who are living in their cars. And with that like experience in mind now, going through all the meetings that we've now been doing with the parking subcommittee for the IVCSD, which is something that's accelerated recently because with the help of the company that I'm involved in finally deciding to assign a person to schedule things that I was bad at scheduling, me going through and walking around the West End and having meetings with a number of people in person as well. I've kind of realized a pattern of the thought process of the people who have been largely fighting for the one particular solution, which of course we're not looking at a particular solution, but the one particular solution of like some kind of parking permit program over the years. So the people, particularly the older residents, the single family residents, people on the West End, to include people like Bruce Murdoch, who had actually fought against the previous parking permit program that had been put into place because it did not have an R1 specific region that would keep people from parking over there. They moved here at a time when IV was at a much lower density than it is now, and they miss that time. They seem to also have issues with the people who, because we've got higher density as you move towards the university, and the lower density over there, that's not prime parking, because it's not prime parking, and because there are some streets that are less developed. That's where the houseless community tends to go and set up longer term camping. And they've lobbied with the county for 72-hour parking restrictions, for large vehicle restrictions. They're upset about the lack of enforcement of the laws that they feel like they've succeeded in getting there. And a pattern that I have seen is that they end up fighting for the parking permit program in no small part as a proxy for how to stop having houseless people living in cars near where they are. Now, I say this, I want to be clear that I don't think that their complaints are from an entirely non-compassionate place. The result might seem that way, but there is a fundamental lack of infrastructure in the area, and it is not. And when you talk to them, they don't just go towards people shouldn't be living in their cars. They go towards why isn't the county finding a better place for these people to be living. They do sometimes even bring up transitional housing programs and safe parking programs. And I believe that what's going to end up happening when we end up finalizing all of the study work that we're doing, and we end up having the big discussion with everybody about what it is that we want to accomplish, whether it's building more parking, whether it's putting in a parking permit program, whether in such a case, charging for it, making it resident only, having zones, all of these discussions. I think that we're going to end up inside of a battle, which I've already personally experienced again during that previous, during the subcommittee from 83. We're going to end up in a battle over us explicitly making the decision about whether or not people actively get to live in cars in the area or whether they don't. Because as part of the process of us imposing a solution in the area, we will be either actively making a carve out to make certain that these people are given resident badges, that these people are getting subsidized costs, whatever's required to allow them to be there, or whether we are going down paths of enforcement where some people I've talked to, and at least one person we talked to as the committee as a whole, have even brought up just using the IVCSD's powers to just get, barring us putting into place any kind of parking solution that, they would want to see in the long term. In the short term, can't you just pay for more enforcement? So I've been stewing on this, I'm that concerned for a while that we're going to end up caught in the battle of people on both sides threatening lawsuits in an attack and a stymied failure of a process, and what to do about it. And finally, I feel like in a discussion with Maya, who's maybe all of you know, but at least most of you know, I finally had like an epiphany about what we need to be studying as part of this process in order to, I believe, stave off that the failure mode in the future, and also come to a better successful process for our community, as well as, I believe, put us on the forefront of these kinds of activity of how to deal with parking in coastal zones, and how to deal with parking and when you have an active household community that's in yada yada yada. And that's that. I think we need to be studying the how to build, potentially then us actively entering the space to work on building better safe parking programs. So the issue comes up often that, well, we have safe parking in the area. Why don't people use it? And I've talked to a number of people over the years, people who either know people who live in cars or people who actively live in their car. And I've mentioned the safe parking program because I've been on this board. We've had discussions with people who come here talking to us about the county safe parking program. And I've been in discussions with the IV community network about safe parking program. And the general commentary comes back that the safe parking programs have sufficient number of restrictions and limitations, both in restrictions on people and limitations in their scope, that they end up being not just not enticing, they almost end up being insulting to the community that should be using them. This is an exact quote from me at Maya, because I actually took dictation as she was saying it. It is often dreamed up by people who don't have the experience of living in their cars or being broke, and it comes off as authoritarian and insensitive in a number of ways. It would ideally be somewhat nuanced by people who have had that experience and do have friends who are in that situation, as that way they can provide really useful and sensitive feedback and suggestions rather than just how we can solve this problem the easiest way or whatever. The one thing that I've run into, like in the IV community network meetings, is that is a requirement for a check-in time in order to utilize the safe parking program. When I've pushed back about this idea, or when I pushed back on this, I was told that supposedly this had something to do with fire restrictions, that they need to know who's in the parking lot in case something bad happens. I pointed out that I've stayed at many, many hotels over the years where fire is a much more serious issue than a parking lot, and I've never had to check in at a specific time with a hotel and make certain that they know that I was there or was not there. But I think that if we don't go down that angle again, I think that we're going to end up in the middle of a war that we accidentally caused. And I think that it's going to end up becoming this like linchpin issue of this whole thing. But I think that we can build much better programs. What would it take to provide infrastructure? There are these oftentimes there aren't bathrooms available. Maybe, for example, as part of the process of providing parking in IV, we need to have an area that's designated for car camping that has a little shed that actually has a bathroom in it, and that the enforcement that occurs is at 3 a.m. to verify that there are no cars that don't have a person. That just to make certain that it's not being used for overnight parking. I don't know, it's like whatever it is. But I think that we need a study that looks at the existing safe parking I keep saying safe parking permit, the existing safe parking programs in the area, how safe parking tends to get run both here and in other places, how we differ and why we might differ from other locations, the reasons why people choose to or do not choose to use safe parking programs, and the costs that could be associated or the legal restrictions that can be associated with attempting to change or modify how those parking with those types of rules with the parking programs, and we also need study safe parking. Oh, and we also need a better understanding of how many people are living in cars and what their demographics are, which is something that there have been conflicting reports from various groups. One thing I'd heard when talking about this university was or somebody from the university was that, who's not representing the university, was that at a lot of the meetings it's been coming up, oh, there are a lot of people living in their cars, and there's been a lot of consternation over whether they are, how many people are living in their cars, whether they're, they're hiding it, whether they tell the university what the issues are with getting them housing in the university, all sorts of those things, since the people from the university might be willing to also be involved in the process of trying to really figure that out. So yeah, and I don't know if this is the extent to which this is something that is exactly the kind of thing that Dixon is able to think about. I know this is also crossing into social services from the perspective of the solution space, as opposed to mere transportation, parking, those sorts of things. Then again, we've been talking with Dixon about holistic solutions to parking problems and out of the box aspects of it. Parts of this are things where I do feel like there'd be efficiency overlaps doing it, as far as like, trying to figure out how many people are living in their cars and then trying to like learn things from them. If we're going around and trying to figure out why people are parking in IV, and we're figuring out that person's parking in IV because they're an employee, or because they live at, for instance, Taurus, or because they, are just 3 blocks away from their house or whatever, those kinds of things where you run into somebody and they're living in the community, you can talk to them about what their issues are there. However you slice it, this is something that would be more work than what we've been talking about so far, and potentially means bringing in another consultant at a different time, which would mean more scope, more funding. But from the perspective of making certain that the money that we're spending on all of this doesn't end up going to waste and a giant fireball explosion of pain that leads to nothing, I think it's worth spending that extra money to try to figure this out. And again, I think that this could put us on the forefront of how these types of programs are operated, by actually taking the opportunity of a bunch of so I was Mike right before the meeting. He thinks that there are like 100 people who are living in their car, and so that's actually a sizable number of parking spots. And so it's an opportunity to provide a social service by way of trying to solve a concrete parking problem, as we look at in the past, where we attempt to solve a trash problem and we provide social service with, like, for example, like ID Beautiful. So those are my meandering thought process and how I think it relates to the agenda item that we have today. I don't know what other people think about it.
Ms. Dixon, did you have something you wanted to respond with?
I did, if that's okay. I mean, that was a lot to unpack. I just want to definitely address that. But the couple of things, I took a couple of notes. And first and foremost, regarding the permit zones and the R1 aspect of it, I think when we first and foremost talk about Coastal Commission, there's a lot of things to unpack there alone, because, and just in our experience and working with other coastal locations, is also the lack of interest in Coastal Commission to be able to allow for permit parking. So I think that those are things too that we'll also unpack naturally as we go through the process. The other piece that I really want to touch on was, as you talked about the houseless, And don't get me wrong, Isla Vista is unique and special all by itself, but I want to make sure that we all understand the two is that Isla Vista is not the only community facing this challenge. And it's something that I have to tell you, just as a state, especially our coastal communities, this is a challenge that all communities, all agencies are basically facing right now. And so the reason why I wanted to touch on this when it comes to this particular project is that I do believe that the data collection project, that there will be some outcomes and some information that I think can help to identify and support some of the inquiries that you made. And I think especially given the fact that the robust nature of the data collection that's going to be completed, especially over the annual schedule that we are, by having the off-peak and peak times, you're going to be able to do some trend analysis that could also basically be identified to identify that consistent coverage of vehicles that are present, that as we look at that, we can dig in deeper and have the conversations with the committees and with the participants that are on the project that could identify opportunities to maybe isolate or dig in deeper on certain aspects of the project, especially as it relates to the concerns that you have. And so I think that that's the one thing, while we know what our goal and objective is of the project, the one thing that I think is important is, like I mentioned, being parking realists, is that we don't ignore what's in front of us. And to tell you that I could list a dozen projects right now where the, hashtag van life, houseless crisis, these factors are literally number one when it comes to us trying to mitigate and manage and try to identify solutions. And one of the advantages that I think comes along with this is being able to be on the forefront of some of the activities that the state is strategically aligning with too, so that we can always make sure that we're keeping you abreast and on the forefront of what those initiatives may or may not be, and also maybe where advocacy is needed, or maybe also dissent may be needed. And so that's something that I want to be sure that that's just kind of part of the package of what we bring to the table, is making sure that you're also aware of not only what your neighbors are doing, but also at the state level. And that's one of the aspects of especially kind of our coastal centric aspect that I just wanted to give you that assurance. I can't tell you today what the answer is going to be, because I think the project is going to evolve. But I think what's important is, as we're having the conversations and sharing the results, that's where we can also, compare and contrast and, make assessments and determinations of what those next steps should be, and to identify, if there's opportunities to, have spin-offs and things like that. We're never shy to share those concerns or those ideas or those findings, and to make sure, again, that this is a very interactive and collaborative process as well. So I just, everything that you shared, you saw us all nodding, because it's definitely something that Isla Vista is special and unique, but in the concerns that you shared, I have to tell you, all of the coastal cities, and in fact, even inland, are facing the challenges that you described as well. The R1 aspect of permit parking, et cetera, that is also not unique to Isla Vista, because we have several coastal communities where they would like to have permits to basically eliminate the overnight, vehicle dwellers as well. So.
Thank you for that, Ms. Dixon. Any other things that the parking committee want to share? Director Dessel?
Go for it. Go.
So hi, everyone over there, Dixon. The parking subcommittee has been meeting with a number of people in the community, and it's been very eye-opening. And yeah. And I will say kudos to you all that you're in this work and you're willing to engage on this project, because it's just not for the faint-hearted, and we've just gotten a wee bit, a slice of it. But I would say that my kind of feeling about this is that as we engage with members of the community, there are some members, if you think of it as a marathon, this process of a marathon, there are some people that are mile 15, and they've been at mile 15 since 2010. Okay, and then there's others, like maybe some of us on this committee, who are at the beginning of the race, and we see that we need a whole lot of information on the race ahead. and we're engaging with you all to get that information. What I have found is that we have encountered already obstacles just in talking about a study. And so I actually think that's a good thing, because what we've been able to do is hear where people are. And then we've been able to say, hey, this is what we're doing. We're engaged in a comprehensive process to get really good data and really have an informed decision-making process. And we don't know the direction that we're going to go because we haven't done the study yet. And so I think that has helped a little bit to kind of ameliorate some of the concerns that we're hearing. But there's been some outliers, and those people are going to come up as part of this process. And I think it's our challenge to just kind of realize that this is going to be a process, and it's going to be a race, and it's a long race, and we just have to get through it. And so what I would say to Jay, my lovely colleague, who I cannot imagine this is you calm, is that we have to get the information that we're getting and then move forward. But I don't think we ought to presuppose the outcome based upon information that we're hearing now. I just think that we ought to be diligent and move through the process. And there may be, we may want to think about looking at houseless issues and safe parking programs, but I don't think we ought to do that now. That's just my opinion. I feel like let's move through the data collection and have the data collection inform our next steps, as opposed to listening to people who have been on the forefront of these issues for 20 years and want us to go a certain direction at the onset. So that's my feedback, and I'm excited about the process. I'm excited, really excited about our selecting Dixon. I think it's going to be a really nice fit, and I just appreciate even hearing your comments about how some of the issues that we are facing are not new and are not unique. That's great. I'd rather us not be unique, so that there are some proven solutions by the time we get through this process.
Thank you for that, Director Deschler. Anything you want to add, Director Aguilar?
Yeah, I want to underscore Director Deschler's second sentence or comment, which is that we've already encountered a lot of very energetic opinions, very motivated opinions, and I think that tells us one very simple thing, that people care, people want someone to lead the charge. I'm not saying that it's us as a hero, or we're doing some kind of heroic effort by starting down this path, but I think we're doing a very necessary effort of collecting the data. And like Director Deschler was saying, we've also encountered the assumption that just by doing this, we're going to do X or Y or Z. And I know that the three of us board members who have worked on this have never set forward with that kind of philosophy. We always wanted to gather a lot of perspective and definitely use numbers and data to look at what solutions are possible. Now we're learning that there's more than one problem possible, and that's can be daunting or it can be exciting. I think this is an opportunity for us as a district to really prove ourselves as real policymakers, as a real government, as we encounter a very thorny, scary, fiery issue. So I'm motivated to go through the process and work on it. As a West End community member, I have to hear this commentary all the time. And that's why I wanted to be on the study, not to just share those opinions, but to be there and have an ear and listen more so than to amplify anyone's particular voice. Yeah, I'm excited to go through this process. I'm excited to, first of all, use Dixon's firm because they seem very experienced. To go backwards before we got to the recent thorny issue, when we interviewed the other few firms, Dixon showed us the most unique experience with a community like Isla Vista, with very unique coastal communities. And so that's what made me feel most comfortable in supporting them as our choice. So as we try and take this first step forward into the process, I feel confident.
Thank you, Director Aguilar. Director Freeman, another question?
It's not a question.
Got it. Well,
It's a very short, what is worth response to what.
Please.
okay, go ahead.
So the reason why I think it's I think it's important to look at these sorts of things now, is in the same sense that, well, we have to make a decision. It's about parking in some form at some point. And so therefore we are trying to presuppose all the questions that will come up, not just answers, but all the questions that might come up, so that we can have a study that addresses and gets us all the information we need to come to good answers to those questions when we go to start asking them. And we've been using the process of meeting with people and thinking hard about it in order to figure out more of those questions. And so in the same vein that we know that, well, some people seem to like the idea of a permit program, therefore we should study aspects of permit programs and how they're run and yada, yada, yada. We know that some people we also added, well, some people seem to want more parking. And so we've made certain that we are looking into places that we could provide more parking or how to obtain the university things. It's affected the questions that we ask in the form of, well, we want to make certain we know who's parking for what reasons, because some people believe that there's a problem that is more related to employees or related to people who are living up to the north, or it's just people are just bringing too many cars. Everyone's got those questions. I think that there's nothing different here about the idea that what to do when we eventually have to make some kind of either actively doing something or actively not doing something with the houseless community. That's a question that's going to come up, not presupposing solutions, but now thinking, what information are we going to want to have when we get to that point? And can we make certain that the studies that we do today actually tie into provide the information that we will need to have when we get to that? And so that's why I throw in the idea that I think that we need to look at this, because I think that this is going to be one of the bigger arguments that we end up coming to. I've already been involved in this argument before without even realizing that it was going to come up, because we brought it forward an arbitrary solution. We got hit hard with it by other people. Paola made a very strong, I think, point that we were being insensitive to these communities when we had failed to even consider them in our thought process. And so making certain that we have all that data is the only reason why I bring this up now. It's not that I'm presupposing a particular solution. It's that I want to make certain that, I even suggested in some email that it sent that the maybe with the outcome of this is to convince me that safe parking programs are built where they are for reasons, and that we then have to push back in other places. But we should have that data now. Otherwise, we're going to be scrambling for it later. Or we should start getting that data now, so that when we need to make the decision, we already have it. So we're not scrambling for it later. That's fine.
And I think that Julie indicated that they will be gathering that data, unless I didn't hear correctly.
So I do not feel like we've so far ever brought up the idea of, for example, understanding why somebody is not using a safe parking program in the area. It's a matter of not just knowing that somebody's on the street, but also knowing why they are choosing to not use the safe parking program that's in the area, so that when we are later trying to make decisions about it, we can either determine that, well, safe parking programs might not be a solution to that, or, if only the county were to make this tiny modification, we could actually not have to worry about this argument we're having right now, or
Sorry, go ahead, Director Aguilar.
Can we ask directly to the firm, have you used questions like Jay is describing?
In fact, what I was going to explain was also when we talk about the surveying, I think that this is where some of that customization aspect can come into play. I think one of the things that as we kind of get our hands into the project, one of the things we have to really identify is participation and engagement, and how we can make sure that the houseless can participate. And I don't want to represent that I know how we're going to do that in Isla Vista right now. I think we're going to have to lean heavy on you all for feedback and ideas. But I think the opportunity to make sure that we can involve some of those kind of specific types of questions in the surveying process. Frankly, being able to coordinate, one of the public forums, we can think about the environmental location, so that, if it's something that it's easier to do it outside or in the park, or, we have to think about what's going to draw any of our target demographics to be sure to participate. And I think that those are the things that, in working with you all frontline firsthand, to think about ways that we can make sure. We have to think about the hours or the times of day that we do these types of meetings as well. Not only the forum or location, but the times. We have to think about folks that are working, multiple jobs, so that we can make sure that if it means that we're doing an engagement at 10 p.m. at night, because that's what works for, maybe a target part of the community, I think that's really where, when we talk about really that outreach messaging, figuring out how we can get the word out, how we can make sure that we connect, with really everyone, because the more feedback we can have, and I will say this, when you start to experiment and pivot, the fact is that we really start to see, what works, what doesn't work. Kelly and I just did an online Zoom meeting. We were supposed to have 10 people show up from a neighborhood. We had one, but I got to tell you, it was supposed to be a 30-minute conversation. We stayed connected with her for about 90 minutes. And as a result, we ended up finding a shared parking location that nobody knew even existed. And she's given me 43 parking spaces to throw into the neighborhood in which she lives and works. So those are the kinds of things that, that one voice can make a really big difference. And I think that, being able to figure out how to pivot and make it work, whether it be on site, online, I think that that's the part of the process that, as we're digging in, and I can't highlight enough, as we're gathering the data, we're going to start to see trends. We're going to start to identify anomalies. We're going to start to say, like, what is this? Why is this? And start to pull on those threads. And that's really where, as we progress through this process, that's where the engagement is really going to become just really active. And I love the description of energized community members, because that's a really great way to say it. We talk about people being passionate about parking, and it's probably the one topic when you talk about parking, everyone has an opinion. And I think that that's the place too, where when people feel like they can be heard and acknowledged and represented, that's really where we talk about this process. And and I really appreciate the acknowledgement of this is really what we do. And it's why, when you look at our programs and you look at our track record, the reason why the programs are working and they're still thriving is because we don't try to rip the Band-Aid off and make everything, magically work tomorrow. We got to the place that we did over a long period of time. Getting to where we ideally want to be will be something that will probably take a pretty significant amount of time. And that's where, when I talk about those incremental adjustments, we've got to definitely change behaviors, educate and inform. And a lot of that comes as a result of outreach and education as well. So.
Thank you for that, Ms. Dixon. I've got some questions and some thoughts, but I think maybe the best thing at this point would do to open it up for public comment. Do we have any public comments on Zoom, Jonathan?
We have one from Ash.
All right, Ash, go ahead.
Hello. I just wanted to say that I share the concern about undocumented folks and people living in their vehicles and how the implications of the study might affect them. And I just hope that you keep that in mind. People who live in their vehicles have been deported in Isla Vista. People who live in their vehicles have been harassed by the police and all kinds of other things. So just keep them in your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Ash. Any other comments? All right, we'll bring it back to the board. I appreciate, or I'll give my comment that I appreciate you bringing that up, Director Freeman, because I think it's an incredibly important issue. In hearing the dialogue, it made me think that maybe the right starting place is to learn more about the operations of the safe parking program as it exists. And maybe that's something that the committee and maybe even our full board should learn more about. I know that we've had the director of the safe parking program at our board meetings before, when we've designated, our facility for spots there. And so we've got that existing relationship. And I wonder if maybe sitting down with them and getting a little bit more of an idea of how their operations work might be beneficial, because when I think of that program, which my understanding is it's a nationally recognized program. So they've got a lot of things there that is kind of like the standard for how a program were to work. But I think of that not as something that's transportation planning. And I think of that as more, like you mentioned, the social services. But the two are intertwined, right? So I think it'll just be about trying to figure out what the best way to attack that aspect of it is and what role we can play in it. But I don't feel like I have enough information to say, Dixon, we're putting more on your plate tonight. Go build us a new safe parking program from scratch. But I do think it's an important issue, having said that. So a question that I have for Dixon is about I guess this is maybe actually not for staff, but for the committee. So Jonathan mentioned one of the goals was amended to include an explicit goal of trying to increase the amount of parking in Isla Vista. Can you talk a little bit about the thought process behind that?
That was to access one of the funding sources we want from the county. That's one of the requirements of that funding source, which is the parking and loop fees for things like the loop, Nikon Gardens. So there's a parking fund from those developments. And one of its goals is to increase the availability of public parking. So by adding that line, we were able to have that funding source.
Got it. Well, thanks for clarifying that, because I think that could be read by some in many different ways, but it's good to hear that is sort of the specific reason behind it. Director Freeman?
I will say that I was really glad when I saw that made more explicit, because over the years when I've talked to students, that's always been the number one request is why can't there be more parking? Maybe we could have an offset parking, maybe we could have. And so making certain that was something that we were studying made me feel a lot more at ease with this whole process, where it's less about, well, clearly we're building a parking permit program. It's like, no, we're looking at a bunch of options here. That's just one of them, to tie into the idea of not presupposing solutions.
You are not gonna let me forget that, are you?
I was almost going to make a call back to that too when I saw that written down there. So. No, but that's good to hear that it is really a practical thing as well for the funding source. Any other questions from the board? Well, not seeing any. I'll just share. I mean, I really want to say thank you to the committee, because it really does not seem like these discussions have been for the faint of heart, like you say, Kirsten. This is a challenging topic, and it's especially challenging because there is incredible momentum to the status quo, and I think all things that we work towards, but especially something like this, which is something that touches many people's daily experiences in Isla Vista. And I think that I feel very confident in the Dixon firm. Your qualifications speak for themselves. Being nationally recognized and having won awards and having worked in communities like Isla Vista. And I really appreciate your comment, Julie, that to sort of, force us to remind ourselves that Isla Vista is unique in a lot of ways, but not unique in every way. And that this is a challenge that is experienced by many different communities in California and in other states as well. And it definitely says to me that the work that you're all going to be doing is informed by a lot of experience tackling these issues, which makes me feel confident about the study that we're going to get out. Let's remember that the last time that we had a parking study in Isla Vista, it was done not really with a whole lot of no community input process, kind of just done by a transportation planner. It was over and done, and it was ripped apart by the community for that. And I think we should be excited about ourselves for really saying we're going to go through with it and actually do something and that has a public process and that has a much more robust, expansive scope of work. We're not doing it just to check a box for any planning documents. We're doing it because we want to solve the problem. And I think that there's something really to be said for that. So again, to the committee, thank you all for all of your tireless conversations, getting us to this point. And thank you for working with our partners in order to secure partnership with UCSB and the county. It's important for the funding, of course, but it's even more important, I think, that everyone is at the table, because this is an issue that's Isla Vista, but it's also the region, right? And so that buy-in speaks volumes, really, I think. So I'm excited to support this. And I really appreciate Dixon for being here and getting to talk a little bit about your experience. Any other thoughts from the board? Director
I
Deschler.
just wanted to say that I appreciate your comment about studying more safe parking programs and the safe parking program in general. I think that's really helpful. I think that us getting more of an understanding of that program will be helpful as we move through this process.
Thank you. All right, well, having said that, I think we're at the end of the conversation. Is anyone ready to make a motion? Director
Is there
Flaherty.
I mean, so the thing we're actually discussing here directly is about getting a split of funding contributions from different sources. I don't know if there's any introduction that Jonathan wants or explicitly does not want to provide about the.
Yeah, we're gonna approve our portion today and also make the requests of the other two to fund it. I mean, we've been talking to them, but this is the formal request that we want to submit on the board letterhead and make the official ask. So we'll give you the update at the next meeting as part of the budget, what happened. So this is the funding plan that we have. If things fall through or things don't happen, we'll have a different funding plan at the next meeting, but we're approving our portion, which is the 82,000 today. And then we hope to get the answers relatively soon.
Director Flaherty, I think you're ready.
Yes, I move approval of the district's portion of funding $82,000 for the Isla Vista parking study and authorize the general manager to make requests of UCSB and the county for partnership funding.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
Seconded by Freeman. Any further public comment? Don't see anyone in person, nothing on Zoom. So we'll bring it back to the board. We'll go to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thanks again, everyone, for all your work, and thanks to the firm for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're going to move to item 4.2, which is the Finance Committee budget update.
Good second. That's weird.
So we had the longest finance committee meeting in history, I believe.
Did you get a break?
Our agenda was 3 pages long. Our attachments were 23 pages long. We went through it all in great detail.
In 1 hour.
So ask us anything. We're prepped for this meeting.
We were efficient though, and we do have a draft budget at this point, and we will kind of what our next steps or process is get your input today. There'll be another finance committee meeting for some more fine tuning and different, just adjusting other numbers. Then there'll be a recommendation for the preliminary budget on June 28th, and then the final budget in August. So because we will have some adjustments to make over the summer. For example, our public safety programs, we're not going to get those updates until after we're able to approve a preliminary budget. So if anything with those, we'll make those adjustments like over the summer, for example. But I'll go over, we have gone over most of this, and that's like the benefit of our process is we've gone over a lot of this already. I'll go over the operations section more in depth right now because we made specific, that was one of the specific things we discussed on Thursday. It was one of the final puzzle pieces. And then I'll talk about the revenue and how we've set up a lot of the revenue. And we did address the board, preferences of like seeing the full cost. So this is pretty much has all the full cost of everything and the revenue assigned to it. And I'll show you how you can see how much who's spending on what. So here's the operations budget. It's pretty simple this time because we've kind of changed things around, and I discussed with the committee too, but maybe even changing these categories a little bit after, like during the summer for the final budget, since the structure is changing a bit. But this 2001 is my salary plus the employee costs related to me, and then our 30,000 here is a proposal we got from a CPA, Carrie Troop, who was referred to us by Ross. She works at other special districts in the county. The committee reviewed it, but we were making some adjustments to the scope from that discussion that weren't ready for today's meeting. So we'll get at the next meeting. But the committee did like this idea of adding 30,000 for a assigned finance person, but who's contracted. from the district. So
And I'll just say from looking at her proposal, she really is providing a lot of service to us and
Yeah.
taking a lot of headaches off our shoulders. And I think the pricing is very good.
I've interacted with her at a number of other districts.
What-
I've interacted with her at a number of other districts, and so she has a lot of understanding of how special districts in Santa Barbara County operate and everything. So,
no training needed. Just, give her the Google Drive where the bills are. And then this is also the legal fees that we also reviewed the new legal services agreement at Finance Committee, which we'll talk about right after this as well, but we did include that cost into here. So that's your, I guess, the operational staff at this point, which is the GM, legal and finance would be $229,000. The program 2002 we've gone over already, which is the community engagement section. So the only adjustment we made is we reduced the intern budget, since we're going to spread out the interns over different programs and have like one or two focused ones instead of larger groups all at once. So that's the change there. This is just our office budget. It's the same every year pretty much. Training fees, our internet, which is internet for all three facilities, or all the spaces we have: office, community room, community center. Office expense, this is going to take into account our cleaning fees for our office, which we do now. It's great. And a laptop and other, monitor and keyboard for our new program manager employee coming on next year. Operations, this is one thing to note, and I'm going to find a new line item account for this, but we're paying for the election this next fiscal year. So that's one change. It only happens every other year, but we have the election this year to pay for. And our liability insurance and workers' comp prices went up by about $2,000 total. So those prices go up with payroll. So in the past, we had a lot of things going on, a lot of people, but they were on contract with United Way or IV Youth Projects. Or now a lot of those positions are becoming in-house, which means the payroll is reported to our insurance company, which means we get charged more for insurance. So that's why that cost has gone up. And then this is the board, which is for 3 days of service per month. The community center program, we've gone over it. There were no changes, but we went over it at a previous meeting. But $189,000, and all of these are with the current salary range maxes. That is a whole other issue that the finance committee will address, the compensation study and how we incorporate that. Just another reason it won't be the final budget next week. But yeah, all of these budgets are at least the most conservative number, which is the max of the range for each position is what was budgeted. That's how we've done it so far. One suggestion that came up that hasn't been done yet is moving Survivor Resource Center funding to our public safety section of the budget. So that's just a little note, it's still $3,000. Community garden, we've gone over, that's just the community center garden plus the existing one. Compost collective, also unchanged. Community festival, so here's the updated number in here, 110,000. And so that's the assumed full cost of both a Halloween and Deltopia event, which is based on what we currently spend this year, plus inflation, and plus this year, the UCSB end of it. But we hadn't put in the 30,000 that UCSB funded to the budget, so we added that in too. So that's 110,000 for those two. And then housing, this is unchanged, same as this year. Safety stations, this is a projected increase to the budget. We don't know what the actual is going to be yet. They will get it to us, but we put 95,000, which is almost a 10% increase, but we don't know what the exact number is going to be. But I think that's the ballpark. A parking study, this is the full cost of the parking study, 197,000 for 22-23. And then the other, I forget the other another 60,000 in 23-24. And then 107,000 for the STEP grant, which is fully funded right here. The next one, that's just the person in this room. The next one, we've gone over this one too, is the Isla Vista Beautiful Fund. So program manager, the crew, health insurance, employee costs, and equipment, which is it's a big spend, and we might use our equipment line item for that, but we haven't discussed that yet. Our C-Click Fix app, and then the community plan. We had that proposal for 89,000 or 88,000, sorry, and the finance committee decided to put again this higher number in here. And one of the things on our to-do list is to renegotiate that and talk about a different scope. And it might be a different number, but we just said, let's put the full number, and then we'll be revising it before the August meeting to put in the correct, whatever the final number is. That's expenses. Does anyone have any questions before I go to revenue? Yeah.
If the county, for example, provides money for the parking study.
Yeah.
They would give the money to us, and then we would give the money to Dixon, or they would give them.
It would go to us.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's the plan. Yeah, they might say no, but that's usually the plan. Yeah. Okay, so revenue.
I had a question.
Oh yeah.
I
Sorry.
wanted to ask a question about the future executive support role.
Yes.
So it's not budgeted. Is this something that you'll have budgeted for when the budget is final?
I think we'll have it for even 2 weeks from now, like an amount. We just didn't get to discuss it in the finance committee yet because it's just been an evolving situation and trying to figure out what to do. But I think we're getting close to a good plan now. Now that we're able to come up with a plan and what we can do. Like the assistant general manager position is not in this budget, for example. It's just my position. So now we can figure out this one.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so revenue side. This is the sheet that comes up with our revenue numbers, and I'll let you guys look at that on your own. What it did produce as our projection for next year, it would just use the actuals from this year, which is the most conservative number. It will grow probably by about 10% above this, but we're going to go with the most conservative is our practice. And so that's 1,100,000, 130,000. So that's, if you go look at our past numbers, 2021 was 1,015,000. This year is 1,130,000. So that's why we're going with this number, because it's the actuals from this year. This 15,000 is our exchange with the county for managing this room and the rent for it. We have, can you look at this? 52,000 in lost gains from our investments from this year. It's not good. It's okay. We have 113,000 here. That's the STEP grant funding. So that's 6,000 for Sydney's salary that we get part of that grant, and then 107 for the everything else. Right here, this 260,000. This is under other government agencies. So it's split up a few different ways. This is 55,000 for the community festivals. So that's half the 110. So between Halloween and Deltopia from UCSB, from the UCSB contribution, that's where we've sourced it. The 74,000 is UCSB funding for the safety stations program. And then this 131,000 is the planned amount we'll get for the partnership funds from the county and UCSB for this next fiscal year. So it's in the budget as like a plan to get it. We'll see what happens and we can adjust it by the next time we meet. Next up, here's something new that's in the budget that came up last time. Is there's a projection, a hope to get $10,000 in sponsorship for the community festival. So that's on the revenue side here. And then lastly, our fund balance spending. Two of these is just our extra funding we have in our fund balance from unspent years of the safety station and the mediation program. So we're just going to use these in, the mediation is fully funded using fund balance, and the safety stations is just, 21,000 plus the 74 is the full cost. These other two are the more, these are maybe more significant policy decisions, which is what the committee is recommending is 65,000 and 88,000 each from the undesignated fund balance. And I'll go into that spreadsheet in a second, but what we're saying is we should fund these two large, studies out of our undesignated fund balance instead of our annual operating costs. So yeah, that's revenue, 1.7 million, which is, a long time ago would have been unheard of. And then this still has us with a net of 84,000. So there's still funds to allocate. And this isn't the final revenue number either, because we haven't gotten June and July actuals yet, which may bump it up by another 20,000 or so. So yeah, this 84,000 is what we can discuss about the market adjustments for the salaries, and that will be one of our guiding numbers to what we can afford. Also the executive support role. And then any questions on revenue? Yeah.
Those investments are somehow indirect through our pension plan or something?
No, it's with the money that we have at the county, like in the treasury. They like invest some of it. So
County invests, interesting.
yeah, we have made money in the past, but this year it's not been a great year. So
Yeah, no. Could get much worse.
could get worse. The fund balance. So 21, 22 this year. This is how we plan to end this year, with 1.9 million in our fund balance. 43,000 would be for these two programs that we have UCSB contribution leftovers for, the safe station and the mediation. 480 is this restricted fund. It almost, hard to explain what it really is. And then we have 1.8 million in the district's committed and undesignated fund balance. We updated our committed fund balance numbers because they are percentages of our expenses and revenue. So our short-term strategic reserve, our maintenance fund, our self-insurance, capital fund, long-term strategic, they used to cost us 940,000. Now they cost us $1,030,000. They just go up as a function of our budget getting bigger, essentially. So out of that 1.8 million, we take out $1 million for our fund balance committed, which then leaves us with an additional 854,000 of undesignated funds. And then there's an additional 103,000 of undesignated UCSB contribution that's surplus from past years and not using the whole thing, mainly in the first 2 years of the district. And then the projection for next year, so this is after taking out funds for the parking study and the planning report. The projection for next year would be to end with 780,000 in our undesignated fund balance, and then 174,000 at UCSB, which then actually grows our total undesignated amount by 2,000 to 959,000 next year. But this is not final because we still might allocate that UCSB funding. The reason it's gotten bigger is, and we'll talk about it at the next meeting from 2 weeks, is the interpersonal violence investigator won't be something we're able to fund next year. And so that just reduced a lot of ongoing costs from the UCSB contribution. So we might have a different plan of how to use some of that money. But this is where we are at right now. So that's the budget, and it's not for approval today, just for your comments, and the finance committee will meet again next week to take into account and approve, recommend something.
Thanks for the presentation, Jonathan. Very thorough as always. Any questions from the board? All right. Or Director Freeman, go ahead.
It's the times of talking about the budget that I most miss having Bob Geis on the board to make some kind of comment about budgets and about the organization style of this document and how it's come, how much better we've gone at doing all this over the years.
Listen to, we'll have to give him a call.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna call about this money the county's losing on our behalf.
Yeah, he would have explained all of that.
I feel like you and I were on the same wavelength because I was like, they do what?
What? That's so contrary to my understanding of what they do. So I will definitely reach out to Bob and get a little insider information on what that's all about.
He's our man on the inside.
He is the man on the inside.
Any other questions from the board? All right, well, I want to open up public comment then. Any members of the public who'd like to speak on Zoom can hit the raise hand button. No one on Zoom? Okay, no one here in the audience. All right, any further discussion from the board? we're all just shell shocked because we got so much information.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I feel like I need a wee bit of a cheat sheet or like Econ 101.
There will
like,
be.
right
Oh,
before
yeah.
we do this.
This is just the overview to get input. So when we do the final approvals, there's a like a narrative to talk about every section and what it does and all that. So
Well, it's very good to see it's getting organized, and I know this isn't the final document. It'll continue to be evolving. We'll have our preliminary budget, which we're still in draft preliminary at this phase. Two modifiers there, but I think we're getting close, and I'm looking forward to hearing more. Jonathan did mention something about the interpersonal violence investigator, which I think we'll talk about at future meetings, but I might have mentioned this at the past meeting, but Jonathan and I are meeting with UCSB CARE and someone from the district attorney's office on tomorrow, on Wednesday, or is it Thursday? Keeps getting moved. To talk a little bit about ways that we can potentially help augment services in a similar vein for survivors within the confines of the justice system. And I think we're looking forward to learning more, but I think my goal, when hearing this is to say, how can we continue, in this 1 year period where there is going to be a pause, to try and use that tax revenue and that program revenue for something that's good, even if it is just for a short period of time before we're hoping that we can get the service resumed.
I have one comment. I just wanted to say, who's ever on the finance committee, right? And Jack, who else?
And Ethan.
And Ethan. Wow, thank you. That's all I wanted to say, because it's really impressive, this document, and it's I don't have the skill set to understand this, and so I really appreciate the people who do. And I think it's nice how we all kind of complement each other on this board, and I'm just very appreciative of people who have had numbers. So thank you, and thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, Jonathan does a very good job. And I would just like to say that I feel like our budget is in great shape, that we're doing very well, and it always helps to have reserves. So that certainly gives us a lot of breathing room and flexibility. We did also discuss the family advocate proposal that was made.
Yes.
Do we want to talk about that at all now?
Yeah, do you want to go for it?
Sure. We thought that the whole concept was really strong. And, we feel like it's very important to have a bilingual, bicultural aspect to our involvement in the community, and make sure that our services are really open and welcoming to all. And so, there seemed to be a lot about this that we thought was very exciting. However, we thought the fit for our organization was a little bit awkward, and it would be a little bit difficult to really parse out what they were doing on behalf of youth projects and what they were doing on behalf of the community services district. And then ultimately we were concerned because our only opportunity to fund it would be from reserves. And we thought that that was not a good reason to dip into reserves for kind of a ongoing operational position like that. So we were not recommending that we go ahead with that.
But we did bump up the intern budget for the community center. We doubled it there so that we could hire or give more hours to a bilingual intern who can do a lot of these kinds of functions and be there at our events and, test out the idea. And it's at a lower price, and we would be achieving a lot of similar goals.
Thank you for that. I think it's a great synopsis. Any other thoughts from the board? I'll share one quick thing, because I'm looking at Director Freeman. I think it was at a previous meeting you had mentioned the desire to try and ensure that we are spending the money that we have not requested from UCSB, and trying to make those requests too. And I think we're thinking about that as well. So I just wanted to point that out.
Let me share my screen one more time. I do have just a quick chart that might help you think about it, and then we will talk about it more at the finance committee, I think. But here's how we've used the money. This is actually going to be a little different, but I'll edit it. This is how much we've requested for this fiscal year, for example. And then this is what we're thinking for next, I mean, for sure, these two, and then these are other possible things we might need to fund, but there's nothing in there right now. So this is how I haven't actually done this before, breaking it out as its own little chart of, and then doing a calculation. Like, oh, you know, we still have 70,000 of next year's UCSD allocation after using half for some for the festival and some for the safety station. So we can have.
What is the third one? I just can't read it.
It's interpersonal violence
Oh,
investigator.
thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
but that's at 0 right now because we don't know. It was 120 this year because it's kind of a lot to explain, but during COVID, we got the full 150,000 funding, and then we only spent this 120 amount. And so we had an extra amount in our fund balance for this year. Yeah, it's 21, 22 now. And so we're going to use that amount plus this 120 to do the full cost of IVI this year. Yeah, because I guess our informal policy, which we might want to make it a formal policy, is first in, first out, to try to spend the oldest money first, which is what's in our fund balance.
And that spending was a function of temporary reassignment due to COVID.
Yeah,
So
so
it
we
wasn't-
didn't, yeah.
It wasn't like the cost changed in the contract or anything. That's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, we just didn't have to pay for a quarter essentially because they weren't doing this work.
All right, any other questions or feedback on the budget? It won't be the last time you get to get feedback, so.
Oh, good.
I'm glad the process still works.
All right.
He's into it.
Cool. Well, then with that, we will move on to our next item, which is item 4.3, the legal services agreement fee update.
Okay, and I'll share my screen and then I'll let Ross give his presentation about this, which he also did, excuse me, at the finance committee. So Ross, take it away.
Great, thanks, Jonathan, and thanks to the board for considering this as part of your budget process. And the area to focus on is what Jonathan has put on the screen. I made a number of corrections in the body of the agreement, but the bulk of what the board should know and consider is listed on the exhibits, particularly Exhibit A. Just as a kind of a brief reminder for those who have not been here since 2017, when the board first got started, and I was watching the slow accretion of this community services district from afar, being a UCSB graduate. You know, I keep tabs on the nexus and the kind of the comings and goings of the community, no matter where I've been. And when I saw that a CSD had been formed, given the type of law that we do, I reached out first to Ethan, and he was responsive in trying to arrange for some type of legal representation and assistance that can bog down newly created and constituted boards. So I came up and made a presentation, and I agreed to represent the district for $1,000 for 6 months. So pennies a day, essentially.
Woohoo!
And our commitment at that time, and I say our as an Allenshire Winder, our commitment was we will keep in mind and be sensitive to the financial position of the district, because at that point you had a district, but you had no funding except for some promises from the university. And so we worked together to get Measure R passed. We did the legal work, and you all did the campaigning work on your own time. And we provided input and information. We provided information to the community, received their input, and in the end, Measure R was successful. And as you've just seen, the budget is in a much better position now than it was before. And so my firm's leadership is asked that the financial aspect of our legal services to scale accordingly. And so this agreement does really two things. One, it brings the district closer in line with our normal rate structure while also recognizing the history that we have built together and wanting to recognize that history by continuing to offer a discount from our normal, our regular hourly rate structure for special districts. So it's as a contrast from the prior agreement, it's an increase of $1,000 per month, which changes the effective hourly rate from $210 an hour to $260 an hour. The last adjustment was for inflation, and so your actual hourly rate right now is $212 instead of the previously approved $210. And so that is reflective of the changing times. Inflation obviously is biting everybody. But the as point of comparison, our normal rate structure for special districts is we start at $285 an hour. So this still represents $25 an hour less than our normal rate structure. Again, in recognition of the relationship that we've built with the district and helping it to really represent this community as well as it has been. The 20 hours, I think I would defer to Jonathan. When we went to a monthly set amount, it was with an eye towards how can we best build in an economic benefit, and does having that set amount, are you using it all? And if you're not, should we lower it? Should we increase it? What should we do? And other than a couple of personnel issues that have come up that are at a special counsel rate, which are in section 2, and the occasional election issue, which has come up, most of the work I am able to program under the general counsel rate, which is the lowest rate for the services that we provide. And so, for example, risk management litigation and litigation and special services, we don't do any risk management litigation because other than a kind of a fluke lawsuit at the very beginning that we got resolved very quickly, the district doesn't get sued. And if it does, you have insurance for that, and they will most likely provide outside contract panel counsel at a rate that your insurance provider negotiates on its own. Even if we do get assigned, that is still at a lower rate than some of our special counsel, other special counsel litigation rates, which are listed. So for all intents and purposes, the litigation and special services rates, they're just numbers. They don't really have any financial impact. Where the impact comes in is in the $5,000 a month for up to 20 hours and the $260 an hour thereafter. I would say we meet that at least half of the time, and perhaps as much as 3/4 of the time. But again, I would defer to Jonathan on that. My goal is always to provide the best legal services that we can as economically as we can, which is why I do my best to not break out work into special service areas. I try to keep it under the advisory services and transactional services to keep the costs low. And that is the rate that you get, whether it's me or if it's one of our senior partners who has expertise, for example, in labor and employment. Jonathan was working closely with one of our labor and employment partners who is great and who knows much more about that area of the law than I do. And so for her increased level of expertise, we get a special personnel rate. But if it's the top person in our firm in that area or Pam, the rate is the same. For the transactional advisory services, if I go to one of our senior partners and ask them a question, the rate doesn't go up because of their level of experience. Another way that I've built in economics and efficiency with the district over time has been to split costs. And this has been very successful and very popular with some of your fellow districts in Santa Barbara County, Los Olivos Community Services District, and Santa Maria Valley Water Conservation District. I've had the occasion now, kind of in the waning days of COVID, to make sure I can split costs between those three clients, where normally only one or two of the clients would bear some of the costs. So I look for those opportunities to keep in mind to reflect the fact that our firm takes to heart and keeps in mind always that we're not spending your money, we're spending the public's money. And so we want to make sure that we do that in a way that is responsible. In the past, there have been one or two public comments about expenses. I've made sure since then that there aren't any issues. When I do have to stay overnight, I stay at a place where I get the best rate because I'm a program member with them, so I don't spend extra money on food. When I do spend money on food, it's usually because I go to the Albertsons over on Stork. I buy a couple of salads and a couple of sandwiches, and that gets me through, the day. So we're looking for cost efficiencies everywhere because it's the public's money. It's not your money. It's not our money. And we want to make sure that we're doing right by the ratepayers and the taxpayers. The other feature that I mentioned is an annual CPI adjustment, which is the intention of having the district's discounted rate continue without having to redo this discussion, every 2 years, unless of course the board, wants to bring it up, and you're free to do so at any point. But the idea is to kind of routinize and to make the CPI adjustment happen annually in January, and that be it. So the rate adjustment for now to increase from 210, actually 212, up to 260 is to get you into that discounted range for our firm's normal range for special districts. And then the CPI adjustment is to keep you in that range moving forward. So, and it's also, that's something that is easy to predict because it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics information for Los Angeles, Long Beach, Anaheim, which is the same statistical area that applies for IVCSD. So this was the discussion that I had with my firm's leadership and what I was able to come back to request, and I can take any questions at this point.
Excellent. Thanks for the presentation, Council. Any questions from the board? Director Freeman.
CPI updates occurring in January. Is that in line with what we've previous time? Does it need to be in line? Do we care to the extent to which it's with
It's not what's going to be recommended for the employee salaries.
That seems to be logical and easy to work with.
You said it's different. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, but it's this is being a contract and all, it's easier to calculate like splits. Like if it's already a known CPI amount, then we can budget for the half of the year. Way easier than salaries, which would be more complicated.
I was actually going to ask the same question as Jay. That's because we've been hanging out here for so long. We're starting to think like, it kind of breaks my heart that you're eating dinner at Albertsons. That's the only thing I have to say.
Dinner and lunch.
I mean, I don't know. I just feel a little badly about that.
You can thank one.
Well, I would rather do that than have the board have to weather any criticism from the community about something silly like where I've eaten one meal in the past 3 years. It's just easier for me to go to a place I used to shop at when I lived at the end of Trigo Road and buy some food that I'm used to eating, and then nobody has to worry about it.
Maybe we can interest you in some IV Food Co-op wraps.
Yeah.
And any other questions from the board for Ross? Ross, I shared with you when we were in finance committee that I still remember watching you walk in the door when we were having that committee meeting. And my immediate thought was like, either we're about to get sued or this guy's here to help, and he was here to help, which was really cool. So just thanks as always for all the work that you do for us. And I think that this is a good adjustment. I'm glad that it kind of locks us in stone so that we don't have to kind of go back and revisit everything and then take up the staff time of trying to get it all prepared in future budget cycles. So I think it's very reasonable. I think it makes sense. It's in line with what we're, I think, looking to do for our employees as well as we update those policies. So I'm supportive of this. Any, let's open public comment. If there's any public comment on this item. No. Can't imagine that there would be. Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. Any last thoughts?
No, I just wanted to say, echo kind of what you said, is that I really appreciate your legal advice. I think you just do a great job in representing the district, making sure that we have good information. And I appreciate your follow-up emails and explaining complex issues and really taking the time to make sure that we understand the nuances of whatever it is you're talking to us about. So I just really appreciate your legal counsel and money well spent.
Thank you, Director Deschler.
So with that, is anyone ready to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve the new contract for legal services.
Made by Topliff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Deschler. Any further comments from the board? All right, we'll do a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross. Now we're going to move to item 5, which is reports. Any board members have reports they'd like to share?
How come sometimes you ask us individually our vote and then sometimes you just say all in favor?
If there's someone on Zoom or not.
Oh,
It's the
rule.
rule. On Zoom, you have to do a roll call,
get out.
but in person.
Okay. Just
So come in person for faster votes.
Oh, cool.
For like certain resolutions, do we have to do roll call too?
Yeah.
Remember we did
Yeah,
that?
it's you got it. It's resolutions and then in person versus Zoom. Any reports anyone wants to share? Director Freeman.
The County of Santa Barbara chapter of the California Special Districts Association is intending to do the chapter meeting for July 25th at Isla Vista at the Community Center.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Will you send us that information so we can put it on our calendar? Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
send it in.
That's exciting.
It's now on the,
You know
it's
what-
now officially on the Isla Vista community calendar on our website.
And that's July, not June.
That is July, not June.
So all our colleagues.
Well, looking forward
Should
to
we do
that.
something nice for them? Should we do something nice? We should do something
could.
nice.
We could, yeah.
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 Let's talk
We'll figure
about it. I
something
mean,
out.
welcoming
Yeah.
into Isla Vista, that's a
Showing the
significant.
space.
Yeah. Maybe we should host dinner. Is it dinner?
It is.
That might be nice. That would be very nice.
Okay, I'll talk with Maya, see what we can put on there.
Yeah.
If this works well, used to be that it was a monthly meeting. It's been a quarterly meeting. We're thinking of shifting it back to every 2 months at least. It used to be a monthly dinner that was occurring in person a long time ago, and I think during the pandemic they shifted it to quarterly. But it was like 1 month they would try to do it somewhere in North County, usually like Buellton, sometimes Santa Maria, and then they would do it in Goleta. It was always at the Frog Bar and Grill. And the Frog Bar and Grill has decided to start charging a $4,000 minimum if you're just losing their location, much less. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And so we've been trying to find some place to do it in Goleta that would be a stable location. So if it goes well, then the next pitch would be to try to get it to happen here every other meeting.
Very cool. Any other reports from board members? I'll share that I had the opportunity to join our friends at the UCSB gift sale this past Saturday, and sorted tons and tons of items that were coming in from all around Isla Vista, as well as some of the UCSB on campus res halls. They are looking for additional volunteers. There's volunteering going on basically every day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Embarcadero Hall. So please share in your networks, and the sale will open on this Saturday at 8 a.m. I have a feeling that there are probably going to be some people in line right at 8 a.m. to try to get first picks, and there's a lot of great stuff that's there. We, of course, as you all know, approved funding for this, and it's been really cool to see just happen in action. Special shout out to Viviana. So that's my report. All right, any reports from standing or ad hoc committees? We had finance, we had parking. Any other committee reports?
Policy has work coming up.
Wow.
With a meeting?
Yeah,
When did we last have a meeting?
2 years ago.
All right. Next, report from district council.
Thank you, President Brandt. Two items. One is a report and one is an observation from other clients. The first informational item is that the state is getting federal funding through CARES Act and other funding bills related to that is going to be programmed specifically for special districts. The National Special Districts Association did a lot of work to try and make sure that special districts were included in the various federal funding requests that had been made and negotiated in Congress. And there's a significant amount of money that will be coming to the state of California that will be designated specifically for special districts. And so the criteria are going to be developed this year for how that money can be allocated. And I know Jonathan is very plugged into CSDA news, so I know he's aware of this. And but just letting you know that you've got another set of eyes watching this as well. So when that criteria becomes available, or if any specific programs of interest come to light, I'll make sure to let Jonathan know and make sure that he has that information as well. Might be some opportunities to fulfill some of the funding, the aspirations of the board in terms of expanded funding in different areas and maybe even funding new programs and services and facilities. Second item is just an observation. Throughout my career, one way that public agencies have been able to make an impact in their communities is by having a law day. And essentially what it is in the city or the district or the county, whatever the legal agency is, they request volunteers in the legal community to provide essentially a day of free legal information and legal advice. I've taken part in a number of these types of programs throughout my career, and I find them personally very rewarding because we make a direct impact on people in helping them to understand the legal questions that they have without them having to shell out for the time. And we, in the past, the most successful programs have provided a broad range of areas of expertise. I've seen a lot of success with communities providing information on landlord-tenant law and immigration law, family law, and pretty much anything. And it's a type of program that can be structured such that if somebody comes in and the designated attorney doesn't particularly know that, then they can be directed to somebody else. There are a lot of different ways to go about it, but just something for the board's consideration moving forward. I would be happy to volunteer my time and to work with staff and interfacing with the Santa Barbara County Bar Association and any other of the specialty bar associations to make sure that whatever program that might come to fruition, respects the diversity and the equitableness of the community that the IVCSD is trying to recognize and encourage and strengthen over time. So just a thought. I don't often have an opportunity to provide suggestions, but given the board's comments about how to best make community impacts, that's one that I think can make a lot of difference to a lot of people who could really use that level of support. And it's mostly volunteer time. So other than providing maybe snacks and water for the attorneys, there's minimal costs associated with holding those types of events. And the response from community members who take advantage of it is always exceedingly positive, that there is a knowledgeable attorney who is there to be able to answer some of the basic questions that vex them and that really having that resolved gives them it puts them at ease and gives them a lot of peace of mind. So that's concludes my report unless there are any questions.
Thank you for that report, Council. That sounds like a really cool idea, and I think we should definitely explore that. Maybe in future years, it's around this time of year when move out happens, where that might be a good idea. So I think there's a lot of potential there. Any other questions for Ross? All right, thank you, Council. Report from General Manager.
Cool. I think Sydney's on, so I'll turn it over to her to talk about community engagement stuff and then take it back.
Sure. Thanks, Jonathan. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, sorry, I have my AirPods in. I wasn't sure, but good evening. It's really nice to see everyone. So we had a really great turnout at the Isla Vista Mobility Plan workshop last month. We had over 50 attendees come and share feedback. So we've tracked and compiled all that, and so it'll be incorporated into the IV Mobility Plan. Thank you to those of you that were able to attend. And next up, we'll have KTUA will be hosting some focus groups for more targeted conversations, and we're focusing on events for the year that we'll be discussing tomorrow with our committee. We also had a successful move out meeting last month and learned a lot for next year, and we plan to host a meeting like that annually. We heard some great feedback. And then we are also having a meeting with the county next week to discuss the move out process with a few key stakeholders as well. And lastly, I was going to share an announcement until I just reread the email and realized that it is meant to be a surprise until August, but we did just recently learn that we won an award. So I'll share that information via email, or Jonathan can share after the meeting, but that's it.
Great, thank you, Sydney. A couple other things. I think I told you guys about the award though, right? on Saturday. So yeah, it's awesome.
Is somebody gonna go and pick up
That's
the
something
award?
we need to figure out
Oh.
who can go and when. It's like it's like the same day as the board meeting, I think, or the day after a board meeting. So
Yeah.
and it's in Palm Desert, so 5-hour drive. So we'll figure it out. We should be there
Yes,
to get
yeah,
the
definitely
award.
should
It's
be
a big deal. So
Yeah, big deal.
yeah, it's big news. It's big news. So a couple of other updates. Compost Collective, we have a job open for the compost pile position. So if you know any people who are interested in composting and want to do the direct labor of it, let them know. It also does volunteer recruitment and other things like that. So not just pile turning. And Carly has been doing a lot of work on supporting the gift sale and the food collection aspect. So that's something we took on this year from the gift sale because they couldn't really do it so much with what they had. So we took over the food, not food waste, but it's, unopened food. And we already had been doing that with the Food on Wheels program, but we're kind of combining now with the gift sale and making it the one place to turn in your food at the end of the year. So Carly's just been on the bike, riding around IV, picking up food for the last week. I saw her with just the whole thing failed and she's going out again to get more handling. Like our dirt riders are handling the sorting too. So we've been helping out with that. And it's kind of cool to see the Compost Collective take on that role. The Ivy Beautiful program manager, the application's open until Friday. We've received 3 so far. So just also get the word out for that. We have 2 public safety presentations that are in rescheduling mode. There were safety stations were supposed to be today, but they didn't have a presentation ready yet. So we're trying to figure out a time to make that and the other one happen. We are starting to get a steady stream of move out help requests for our mediation program. So that's good. It's more that, it's been picking up more than every year, a little bit more. Community center in the room, the use is winding down for sure with the summer. Maya's going to give a presentation next week about how spring quarter went. And then back 2 weeks from now.
Oh, okay. It was like,
Yeah,
what?
I mean the next meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
She'll give the how it went and plans for the summer. But we also, me and Maya have met with Ross and our insurance company to start looking at like reworking our interim policies. Because remember, we passed more strict, like we just passed like what we could pass at the time for our use policy. So now we're trying to figure out like where can we be more flexible? Where can we, need to hold the line on things? And we've been talking also about cleaning fees and like, what to do with, like, how can we start implementing some policies based on the use? Because we did have like a problem with a user last week that left a massive mess and we had a lot of ants and we had to clean all that over the weekend quickly. So, we just need to have a recourse, and there's, we've been talking about a fee study potentially and looking into that. So yeah, but we're going to make some more like immediate policy recommendations, and that's something we can take to one of the 3 things to policy committee. And yeah, so we met with Ross about that. It was very helpful. Thank you, Ross. Construction starts on Monday for the shade structure at the community center. So it's going to be loud out there from morning till afternoon during the day. Not every day, but it's going to last about a month. Most of our programs won't be interrupted, but that's because we had planned to wind down by this point so that the construction can go on. So we're looking forward to see how that was working, and we're still working with the county on the encampment issues at this building. Parking, we'll send the letters out to our partners requesting funding tomorrow. So thanks for approving that. We also got a note from KTUA asking what's going on with the planning report. And I think they saw our agenda today, had the parking item on, because I think our last action was let's table this until the parking issue is resolved. So yeah, they just inquired saying, they're still interested, just letting you know. Community festival, it will be time to start looking at Halloween plans already, and Director Top with you had brought up some Halloween ideas at one of our last meetings. So we usually start talking about that in July. So we'll talk about that soon. But one related thing on a policy level was at our Deltopia debrief meeting, one of the issues that came up was how can we have property owners take more responsibility on rooftop partying and overcrowded balconies? And Jen Bertram from the Community Housing Office organized a small meeting today with myself and Ivy Foot Patrol and Fire, just to start like seeing where we're all at. So I just shared what our discussion was, and others shared where they're at. But the idea is to host some meeting in the summer with the big property owners who own most of Del Paya, and start talking with them about this issue, kind of opening it up, not proposing anything, but just saying, where are you at with this issue, and hear from them, and then we can start seeing what could be done. So that's a good progress being made on that. We're almost done. Year end accounting's going good with the budget, and yeah, I want to get the CPA proposal to you all at the next meeting, and she could help us with some of that year end close. Kirsten helped us get in touch with the person at IVCSD and gonna come do an Ocean Road presentation in July probably at that meeting. And then the last 2 things, these are policy committee policies that will be coming up soon, is our consultants still working on the compensation study and the pay and evaluation policies. So we'll take the policies to policy committee, and we'll take both to finance committee since they have a big financial impact. Our credit card use policies are also almost done, and we've been using it, just me, like on a as needed basis, but we're putting together policies to make it just you can't use it for personal things, and here's what happens when you do things like that. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions? Director Freeman?
The compost position, was that a minimum wage position?
It is. One of the reasons we set the wage at $15 for that one is because that's what our partners at the Edible Campus program are paying all of their similar kind of workers in gardens. And so we didn't want to undercut it essentially by paying more. So we might, maybe we can have that discussion, but for now, we just didn't want to, compete that way with them.
For what it's worth, on that position, when I had mentioned it to when it was unfilled to Katie, her response was, yeah, it's really difficult right now to get anyone to work for minimum wage in that kind of position.
Yeah. I think they might be having similar.
Yeah. And then I wrote down move out mediation. You mentioned that we have is that with the landlords or between is it mostly between people arguing with each other?
It's been a mix. Yeah. Some people like, oh, my roommate and security deposit. Some inspection issues.
Is it working? Are we getting the landlords to actually show up?
I mean, we rarely are able to get a resolved mediation. Sometimes just us being involved and starting to, communicate helps move things along, but we don't actually do a mediation. But it's been better. I would say that there's been more buy-in to doing mediations than before. So like success rate's been higher. Yeah.
I did, just to add on to that, that's good to hear. And I had the chance to speak with the director of the Santa Barbara Rental Housing Mediation Task Force recently. She mentioned to me that she still regularly gets calls by Isla Vista and refers them over to our program. So it was cool to hear that was happening. And obviously, we also spoke about how mediation is difficult, but it gets easier with time as that relationship gets built more. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, John interrupt me. I was just gonna mention that I was reading the IVRPD newsletter and that their 50th, is it possible their 50th anniversary
Is that Halloween?
is at Halloween?
Yeah.
And that they are starting that process of thinking about how to celebrate, and there might just be some opportunity for us to work together.
I think that's the
Yeah, and
idea
I
that we've
said
been
that when I
discussing.
attended their last meeting.
Oh, good, I think I
We would
missed
like
that
to do
meeting.
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
I missed.
And then
last
they're
meeting.
meeting again on Thursday, so I'm hoping
Awesome.
that we can keep that going a little bit.
Yeah, excellent. Very cool.
And Kimberly's on vacation, and then I'll be, but then we're gonna meet up in mid-July.
Good.
So
Great.
Excellent.
I have something else to say,
Go ahead.
but I don't know if I should say it now. I can say it next.
Is it a report?
It's not a report. It's something that I want to say.
And I'd like to comment on your report. Should I?
Go
say that
ahead. Go
first?
ahead.
Okay,
Director Chop.
so you had mentioned that the county's new staff is going to do a walk around to get ready for move out. And I just, being the county representative of the board, I would be happy to volunteer myself to be part of that.
yes, we were gonna ask, because we also were inviting one of the IVRPD board members as well. So it would be great if you want to come
And
to
do
that.
you have a time and date yet?
Yes, it looks like what worked for them. Sydney, do you have the time? It's next week. You want to give us a time, Sydney? I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, it's June 22nd at 11 a.m. and we're gonna meet at the community center.
Yeah, and so we're I think it's a pretty cool idea. We're organizing as like a meet and greet with the county staff, like, because Brad Spencer, who was
Is gone,
for many
yeah.
years in charge
So
and
we need to make a
seasoned.
good relationship.
Yeah, so this is the new, and that was something that when I had spoken to IVRPD about, it was a concern for them, was having a good transition. And so we've invited them. So their assistant general manager is gonna come, and we're inviting one of their board members as well. So
Is UCSB involved in that meeting?
Vivian is coming
Oh,
as doing the
awesome.
gift
Perfect.
sale. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
And so we have Carlisle Johnson, who's the head of that resources and recovery, race recovery. And then he's named Eddie, who's the new Brad Spencer for Move Out. So
Great, I'll be there. And then also, there was mention about the UCPD being too busy actually to give us a report on the safety stations. And, but they have data. And so I wanted to say that I think it's important that we end up with a report. And if we have to ghostwrite it for them, I think it would be worth doing that and just getting them to like sign on it. Because I think that's something that we want to be able to put out into the community. And, you know, we need some kind of official statement about what's happened with this program this year.
I
So,
can,
we have Captain Ariel. Barney.
Yeah,
hello.
and I'm just gonna say too, I don't want to get too far off the agenda too. I'm not sure if we're allowed to have people do a public comment on their report.
Yeah.
But I will say, I agree with you, Carrie, that we do need a report, and I think it's something that we're all.
Yeah, and I mean, we can collaborate, but you know, if
Yeah.
they're too busy, we could put in some effort for that, because I think it's important.
Yeah, I think it's also important that we're prepared and that we are clear in our messaging of what's happening with the program, right? Because, yeah, we just want to be clear about that. So,
Okay, so that's all I have to say.
thank you. Any other comments from the board? Kirsten had something she wanted to say.
Is that the time? I just
think
wanted
so.
to say congratulations to Ethan, who's not here, and to Catherine, who graduated from UCSB just a couple weeks ago, days ago. And just that I just think it's awesome that you all have been able, Ethan in absence, been able to participate on this board and do all the amazing things that you're doing here and in your school life and in the community. And I just wish you all the best as you, I know you're not, I hope you're not leaving us too soon, but I just wanted to let you know, I'm thinking of you and I'm just, congratulations
Thank
to you
you.
both.
Thank you. I know, I'm sorry if I've been quiet this meeting too. I'm so exhausted from
Oh,
graduation. But thank you, I really appreciate it.
Congratulations indeed. All right, so our next board meeting will take place on June 28th, 2022 at 6 p.m. on Zoom and here in the community room. For future agenda items, I did want to bring up now, as we are seeing, we just had the report about the meeting that's going to happen about the move out compliance, code compliance that the county has. And I do think it would be good for us to have an item on our agenda in the future while the summer is still happening and we're experiencing these impacts, just to talk preliminarily about where we're all at in terms of exploring some of the ways that we could venture into assisting with the code enforcement aspect of things. It was brought up from Ross that that's something that we do have the power to do. And so I think it'd be good for maybe us to have a little bit more of a focused discussion about it. I know we are also super busy though, but I figured it'd be good to bring up right now while we're all thinking about it and experiencing the impacts. So just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, so then with that, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone. We will see you all on the 28th.